on to our next speaker. I would like to thank Paul Shamplina from Landlord Action and Channel 5 for coming back. Those of you who were here last year, he has promised he's not going to cause any major problems. Although, I would add, somebody asked me today, is the chandelier sort of secure? And I said, well, I'm not 100% certain, but I know they've been cleaned, and I don't know whether that's to make sure it's to reduce the risk of infection if there's a problem. Anyway, here's Paul. Thanks.
Hello everyone, how are you? Do you know what I was thinking to myself? You can't control me. I'm sorry. You can't control me when I couldn't come up here ballless, could I? Let's be honest, right? But I was told after last year when I went back to the office and they did, pardon my French, bollock me, right? I was told that if I have to throw them out, I have to throw them gently and underarm, right? Or I might, if I have time at the end, Bruce, I might get out and walk and pass them, all right? Is that okay with you? That's fine. Okay, I've been told. So, I've had a busy week. I've had a busy few months, but Monday I was doing a talk to 65 letting agents in Beverley, in Yorkshire. Tuesday I was with the NLA in Manchester. Yesterday I was in Bristol, and I've left the last of the best one, haven't I? Geordie Landlords. Always friendly, always welcoming, so it's a pleasure to be here. So I thought what we'd do today is how to survive and thrive in 2024. Yes, we've taken a bit of a battering, landlords, but for me, it's very much the glass is half full rather than half empty. It may not feel that way, but it is. It's about navigating the changes. And we do have the biggest changes that have happened in 25 years. I have lived and breathed the Renters Reform Bill for the last 5 years. Now, the Renters Rights Bill. The Renters Reform Bill now on steroids is now the Renters Rights Bill. We've had the first reading. We've got second reading on the 9th of October. Okay, so I'm going to inform you, but don't be afraid. We can navigate it. One thing that landlords are is you're very versatile, adaptable and flexible. Is that fair enough to say? Yes or no? Yes. So anyway, we will embrace it. So Bruce wanted me to do an update. So, yeah, okay, the old nightmare tenant slum landlords, everyone wants me to talk about that. They're showing them again. Anyone watching the repeats, put your hands up. One person out of 200. Okay, so it's good. Well, okay. So the series is going well then. Okay. So it's really weird. I get spotted really randomly. People just stare at me, right, sometimes randomly. And they say I'm on Can't Pay, Take It Away. They will say the other TV programme. And I was one funny story. I was so when I go in the crowds, it's like, I went to the football and the boxing Saturday and when these people stand up. So I get asked for selfies in the strangest places. So I was in the toilet having a wee, and a guy said to me, "Can I have a selfie?" I said, "With pleasure, but wash your hands, please, first." But that's God's honest truth. That was at Wembley Stadium when I watched the Anti-Joshua fight on Saturday. But yeah, I did 60-odd episodes. It was great fun at the time. Literally, all those stories are stories, genuine stories from Landlord Action. Last year alone, we did just under 4,000 instructions at Landlord Action up and down the country. I started the series in 2015, 2016, finished just before COVID. And I did it because it was great. It was good for business and all that type of stuff. But it's about the balance, Let's be very, very clear. There's far more nightmare tenants than nightmare landlords. Let's be very clear about that. I get fed up, and we all get fed up about rogue landlords, do we? Yeah? Rogue landlords won't be here, right? Because you are professional landlords. 2024 is about professionalism, right? It's about landlords upping their game. But we are still in a really, really good environment. Rents are higher than ever before, is that correct? You're getting best rents than ever, yeah? You're getting more tenants than ever looking at your properties. I'm sure Christian said, I arrived a bit late, but you're getting on average 20 applicants looking at one property. You're getting least void periods than ever before. They are good signs. Interest rates are going to come down, We have a rental stock crisis and landlords are needed more than ever before, but we have to change the perception of landlording, don't we? And that happens within you guys. for how you portray yourself, how you do your comms. You know, it's a lot of work done. And I said this last year, and I'll say this at the NRLA conference, and I say it all the time, at the ARLA conference I'm speaking at. You know, the word landlord is dated. I said this last year. I owe that land, and I'm your lord, right? Your housing providers and your tenants are your customers, they're your residents. And I think the more we change that, the better. And yes, we are now going to be navigating a new parliament. And what does that look like, you know? But with Nightmare Tenants, you know, my job was about exposing about what happens out on the ground, you know, and exposing rogues. I mean, when the Renters' Rights Bill was announced, I did 5 TV interviews and radio interviews in one day, and just, you know, getting quotes and whatever. And I'm going to talk about, you know, some of the big headliners and what we're going to do and how we're going to do them and stuff like that. But it is about education and, you know, people and events like this and other housing landlord associations. We are beating the landlord's drum, but there is a political agenda. But what you have to do is you have to be able to sit at the table and try and shape what's coming in, rather than not be at the table. You know, let's be very clear about that. You know, as I said, and I said this before, you know, we have to celebrate good landlording, being good landlords. Good landlord stories don't sell newspapers, unfortunately. Bad landlord stories, I mean, it doesn't help. I'm a Nightmare Tenant slum landlord, so I apologise. But we have to, you know, the perception, the professionalism, what we do, the tenant, the satisfaction. It's important because, you know, without tenants, we wouldn't be here, would we? Yeah? They pay for our rent. And of course, when it comes to being a professional landlord, it gives you freedom. It gives you the choice to be with your grandchildren or being on the golf course, you know. And it can be a rewarding business because as landlords, you are versatile. Your compliance officers, correct? Your mediators, your social workers, your credit controllers. Shall I keep carrying on? It's true, you know. But you have to be versatile. But what you also have to do is you have to put a price on your time. And this is where landlords go wrong. You can't be everything at all times. Some of the stuff you don't like doing, delegate. Have your power team with you. Do the stuff you enjoy doing. You know, so I can't remember how many hands went up last year, but when I asked this question, I was at the Landlord Investment Show yesterday in Bristol, and one hand went up, strangely enough. But how many are you still enjoying getting calls from your tenants at the 5 o'clock in the morning that they're drunk and they've lost their keys? Put your hands up. Thank God for that. We're in the right conference, you know. And it can, you know, being on WhatsApp groups now, but put a price on your time. And it may come to a point where you think, you know what, I'm not going to sell my properties or for whatever, and we've got challenges with capital gains and all that. I might need to get someone else to manage my properties, and who should be able to do that? And picking the right letting agent is an art in itself, you know. And actually, historically, letting agents don't charge a lot for what they do, you know. I did a talk last week in Bristol. In Bristol a lot the last few weeks. I did a talk to 120 letting agents in Bristol for Property Mark Harler. And do you know what the first thing I said to them was? You lot all need to up your game, right? And they're like, what? You know, and they do. They need to fight to keep landlords. They need to have an affinity. They need to feel the emotion of what a landlord goes through. They need to actually make a landlord feel that they and their property is an asset and it's being looked after rather than being a number, you know. So I'm forever training letting agents as well. So about Total Property, it's our headline brand where we own all the various different properties, products within our group. So you saw Susie, my colleague, speaking at My Deposits, Property Redress Scheme, Client Money Protect. They're government-backed schemes. You know, what is going to come in further down the line is landlord redress, meaning that all of you lot will have to be part of a redress scheme. And the answer is, yes, it is going to be like a landlord licensing. Landlords and the government want more data on who's the landlords out there. My problem is that when you bring legislation in, and you can talk about the legislation when it came to the deposit scheme in 2007. You know, we still get calls on our advice line at Landlord Action of landlords not putting a deposit scheme. Only came in 2007. You know, we have Renters' Rights, we have Deregulation Act. There's lots. The biggest issue that we're going to have with regard to the Renters' Rights Bill won't be you lot, because you lot will know what's going on. You'll know how to navigate it. But we've got 2.7 million landlords in England and Wales. That's a lot of landlords, you know. And there's a lot of landlords that don't belong to landlord associations or don't have their properties fully managed. and they're accidental and amateur landlord. 85% of landlords out there only have between 1 and 3 properties. They don't see themselves as landlords. That's going to be part of the problem. Because, of course, when there is enforcement that's going to happen and there's rent repayment orders up to 24 months, that's going to hurt landlords, or they haven't got licensing. So it's about making sure that you are investing in your landlord education. You've done that by coming today, but you've got to keep it going throughout the whole year and what's going to be happening, you know? And there's some of our brands. Anyone know, any of you ever go on our website, Landlord Zone? Put your hands up, anyone? Yeah, a few of you. So I run Landlord Zone. It's a breaking news website. Join it. We put the press release up for today's event yesterday or the day before. Go on to landlordzone.co.uk. It doesn't cost you a penny. You'll get breaking news happening on a daily basis. All of you should be going on websites every day, every other day, to find out what's going on. Put your hands up if you're regularly on landlord portals. Put your hands up. Not a lot of you. You need to be seeing what's going on, especially what's happening in your local area. I'm just recovering from a chest infection, so I do apologise. I've been talking all week. So, yeah, we've got lots of different brands. Landlord Action, we're like the emergency plumbers for landlords. You use us as and when you need us. We've got a team of 23 staff. Last year alone, we took over 120,000 calls for My Deposits, protect £1.2 billion worth of deposits, dealing with end of tenancy, you know. Client money protection, great law that came in 2019. I asked for it to become a law in 2002. So if you have an agent that goes bust, your rents are covered. A bit like when you go on holiday with ABTA. But it's taken so long. You know, as I said, having 14 housing ministers in 11 years does not help, does it? That's our problem. We don't have the continuity. But, you know, the private rental sector is so important. So I thought I'd come up with some stats, which I thought would quite apt. So a fifth of all the housing market is the private rental sector, you know? And yes, I predicted 4 or 5 years ago, the white paper came out in the renters reform in October 2019, something like that. And I remember being in Leeds in November 2019 talking about housing courts. You remember about that? If we'd have brought housing courts in now, can you imagine what a difference that would have made? That got scrapped. I did predict that landlords will be leaving the sector 5 years ago. Yes, the start of it was Section 24, okay? And then, of course, what happened? At the end of 2022, we had a fantastic Prime Minister called Liz Truss that came in. She cocked that up, didn't she? The idea of how she was going to stimulate the market completely backfired, and, of course, interest rates went up. But I have to remind landlords, and I said this, pardon me, I wrote a blog on the train on the way up here. As landlords, we have had it good for a long time. You know, the average interest rate of 5% is actually the norm. But what we did have for best on 11 years, we had 0% interest rates. We did well, didn't we? You know, it feels like a lifetime ago, and we've had COVID since then and all that type of stuff. But it's been good. The reality is we know rates are going to come down. And 38% of properties out there, landlords don't even have any mortgage, you know. So it doesn't really affect of what's going on. So the average rent in England is £1,276. You know, average month's rent in Newcastle is £1,400. Is that correct? Victoria, you've done the wrong slides for me. You're reprimanded. So yeah, but the rents in Newcastle have gone up. There's no two ways about that. The rent in London is £2,100 a month. It's been going up, been going down, right? You've got to realise that tenants are paying now on average 35% of their wages towards rent. It's becoming unsustainable, whether you're in Newcastle, London, Wales, it's becoming really, really difficult. And the whole point of the renters reform, the renters rights bill that was being brought in, is being about levelling up. Yeah? It's about trying to professionalise landlords. How the government have gone about doing that, whether last government, where we thought they were more pro-landlord, where it may not have seen that, and this is the messaging needs to change. The tenant organisations have to change. Stop bashing landlords. Because what happens is, if you keep prodding the bear will eventually bite back. And that bear is the landlord who sells his property. Am I right? If they sell the property, good tenants are being asked to leave properties. That adds to the rental stock prices. I felt so strongly about what was going on. I drove my MP absolutely mad, right? Theresa Villas, who sadly lost her place in Parliament, and she was one of the Tories, and she reference checked me, and she said, I've got loads of case studies of problems with the court system, of where it's failing. As I said, I've been involved in this. I issued my first claim in 1991, right, a long time ago, and the courts now, in my opinion, of running this business, and you'll say the same as well, are broken. You're in the luck of what courts you're at, especially the courts in London. You can get hearing dates, but we've got a massive shortage of judges. The biggest problem is bailiff eviction dates. I've got one eviction date we applied for, and I broke it in. It was in the national press last week. We had a landlord that applied for an eviction date in, when was it? July 23. We've been told we should get an eviction date in January 2025. 18 months wait. 18 months. That was a Section 21. There's no rent arrears. Can you imagine if that was 18 months rent arrears? It would push a landlord over, especially if their rates have gone up. You've got 2 million mortgages this year coming out of fixed term. So you are going to get a rise of mortgage arrears and obviously rent arrears because of affordability. So I understand the government have got to do something with regard to renters. They've said rent caps are off the table. But actually, when it comes to rent rises, which you have to bring in once a year through Section 13, that in a way is suppressing rents going up. And they want to stop the anti-bidding laws and all that stuff. I am going to go into a bit more detail. But you are getting 20 tenants looking at one property, You've still got a high percentage of tenants. 40% of tenants don't have any savings. You've also got, the Zen generation. You've got the millennial generation people in their 40s. Home ownership is a complete pipe dream. And that's where you're also getting a lot of anti-landlord feeling. Is that fair enough to say, Bruce? And that's an issue. And it's an issue. So what we have to do is, the perception in the press that every landlord has a Rolls Royce and a Bentley is wrong. Except Bruce, of course, right? Is wrong. Yeah? We're just normal people.
That's why the car park's full of them.
Exactly. I can't believe it. Yeah, I could say. Well, your chauffeur's still waiting out there. I was waiting for the brolly to get me in because it's raining. It always rains when I come to Newcastle. What's going on? I know. You're right. You're right. So, Renters Reform Bill. No more. It was a pig's ear. We ran out of time in the wash-up. The Tory rebel MPs were saying, you can't bring some of this stuff, you need to do amendments, and then he called an early election. In hindsight, we wish we would have got it through. But it didn't happen. So we are where we are. And now we have to embrace it. We can't look at it as a threat. We've got to look at it as a challenge. How do we adapt our business model to what's coming in? We're used to legislation, aren't we? We're used to the laws changing. What we're not used to, and what we get frustrated to as landlords, is the lack of enforcement. Is that fair enough to say? We don't mind paying licence fees to councils, reluctantly, dare I say it. I haven't got a slide on licensing, right? But, and there are rogue landlords, and yes, those rogue landlords are criminal landlords, and it's a small minority and all that type of stuff. But, a lot of this stuff is so workable and it makes sense. You look at the big challenge, and what I'm always writing about is the end of Section 21. So how does that work? It means that with Section 21, when the ban comes in, we've got second reading on the 9th of October. It's anticipated in summertime this will all be a law. There's a lot of stuff that's got to be navigated. Bear in mind, we now have a majority Labour government. Okay, so stuff will get pushed through, then it will get pushed up to the House of Lords. There'll be a bit of ping pong, but it will come in. What I do worry about is all this coming in at one time. That's my worry. Because normally what happens is there's a transitional period of 3 months, But what's going to happen is there's going to be statutory periodic tenancies, 1 month tenancies. You can't ask for 6 months rent in advance. It's going to be 1 month tenancies. What was going to happen under the Renters Reform Bill was that there'd be a minimum term of 6 months, and then a tenant has to give you 2 months. That's pushed out. I worry about the student market. There's been loads of meetings. I know lots of stakeholders that have been at those meetings. You put a tenant in, and 2 months later they give you 2 months' notice. There's a lot of cost and time and effort to find a tenant and onboard that tenant. So I worry about that. The problem I have with all of this is you have to, and I literally wrote a blog, and it will be on the Landlord's own website in the next couple of days. Watch, wait, and don't panic. That's my message that I'm saying to landlords, every week. When I said that all this week, I said it to letting agents. Just watch and wait. We're early stage on practicality. But banning a Section 21, that's a big deal. Because, of course, it was the landlord's safety blanket. How many of you have issued a Section 21, had to go to court because the council have told the tenants to stay put so they can be rehoused? Put your hands up. Look, there's quite a few hands there. That's a problem. We're seeing at Landlord Action in the last year, more than ever before, we are serving more notices and Section 21 than ever before, because landlords are selling. The smaller landlords are selling, yeah? Or predominantly beforehand, there was rent arrears, because landlords didn't want to use Section 8. So you get rid of Section 21, there's going to be now 35 grounds for Section 8. Some of them, I think, are they practical? Are they not practical? But the grounds are going to change, and you need to understand them. 2 months rent arrears is going to go to 3 months rent arrears. 14 days is going to go to 28 days. Yeah? If you want to sell your property, you can't sell your property until after a year of giving a statutory periodic tenancy to a tenant. And then you've got to give 4 months notice. Yeah? You might have to sign a statutory declaration. So there's stuff that you need to understand. At the ending of bidding wars, where there's an auction that's going on, so what will happen is practicality. Most probably, a landlord, if the rent was £900 a month, they'll stick it on for £1,100 a month. I think that's what's going to happen. Do we think that's going to happen? That most probably be the end of the bidding wars. So rents go up. Short term, you could see more tenants being evicted, because what I do anticipate, which I've always been saying, is you'll get landlords looking at their portfolio. They're thinking, I've had a bit of a problem with that tenant. I'm not sure. I'm going to use it before I lose that Section 21. I'm going to use it before I lose it. And then there's a worry about capital gains. So I do anticipate, and I'm not trying to scaremonger, I'm just telling it as it is, my 34 years of being in this industry, I think that you will see lots of landlords serving Section 21s before the new laws coming in. I think that's most probably inevitable in some cases. But let's be very clear. Most of our tenants are good tenants, and we want to keep our good tenants, because the name of the game is having a tenant in our property as long as possible. So the tenant treats that property as a home. Would you live in one of your rental properties? That's a question you need to ask yourself. Yeah? No news is good news. Remember that. As long as my tenant's paying the rent, as long as they can give me access into the property, as long as I'm totally, fully compliant, I'm happy. Is that fair enough to say? Yeah? It's important. Communication's really, really important. And then, of course, Awab's Law, the poor little boy that died in Rochdale. Let's be really clear about this, and I get really fed up. Social housing is worse than private rental sector housing. I don't care what anyone says. I say that openly. I've said that on LBC 2 weeks ago. Yeah? The 14-day law will come in. If there's work that needs to be done, you need to go down and respect. As decent landlords, you should be doing that. There shouldn't be mould. People shouldn't be dying, in 3-4 years ago, a poor little boy from mould, I went on ITV News with Dan Hewitt, who exposes social landlords. And actually, it was really funny. He asked me, he said, can you serve an eviction notice? I said, I'm not doing that anymore. I've refused. He goes, please, please, please. So anyway, this was 2 Christmases ago, I think it was. It was on ITV News. And I knew the agenda. I've been doing press for 23 years. I understand how it works. It's about getting the messaging across, and obviously some of it is quite tenant-centric, and you have to look at and navigate the narrative and all that type of stuff. And then basically, I served a notice. The rent arrears were £17,000. So I served the notice, and then I watched the news later, and obviously they edit it. Paul Shamplina is serving an eviction notice 7 days before Christmas. So that was the last time I ever served a notice on TV. You won't ever see me doing that. They forgot to say there was £17,000 rent arrears for some strange reason. Because, of course, all you landlords are banks, aren't you? But anyway, we have to change the perception of landlording. It's really important. So, you know, a new ombudsman, so that there is a landlord redress. So we run a redress scheme so that if the tenant, the consumer, has a problem, they can make a complaint. Now, most of those complaints might be relating to repairs and disrepairs, but we don't want it to be abused so they don't pay their rent, because, of course, there's blockages in the courts. I think about all the practicalities and the permutations, but also, I also have sympathy now with tenants more than ever. It's the hardest time to ever be a tenant. Is that fair enough to say that? Do we have that empathy and sympathy with our tenants? Yes or no? We do. You know, it's hard. You know, the cost of living crisis and everything that's going up. You know, introducing the decent home standard, that all makes sense. Having a digital database to demonstrate compliance. So the magic wish list is there's going to be a computer, and on that computer, you can basically put a URN number, and your property comes up, and it shows how compliant it is. Gas safety, the land registry, as you know, you've done your electrical, and it shows how compliant. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? If you could have that. Landlord, tenant, letting agent, if you're going to go to an auction, what have you got? All great, but you're asking a government to build a portal to do that, you know, and to do the migration. And I think that would take a long time, you know. I think it was great, you know, but we rent completely different on how we rent in the in Europe. That they're used to renting. And we are becoming more like that now. And this Labour government are saying, right, you know, if you want to be a landlord, you've got to take it seriously. And we want to professionalise it, right? And you need to educate. But this is how it's going to be going forward. So what do we do? Do we look? Do we adapt? Do we think, well, it used to be different in my day? Well, yeah, it would be. Can we enter the new sphere we're going into? Or do I think, you know what, I don't want to do property management anymore, right? It's too hard. Do I get a managing agent to take it over for me, you know? Because my message to everyone here is, if you don't need to sell, don't sell. It's still a good business to be in, you know, and the environment we're in. It's just the way that it's being perceived. And, of course, the new grounds coming up with regard to HMOs, I said about rent arrears, there's a lot of things happening out there, and you'll learn about them in the months to come. So how do we survive? You know, well, it's a business, so we need to make sure that... How many of you want to add properties to your portfolio? Put your hand up. There's quite a few of you there. So what are you doing about it? There's deals out there where if other landlords leave, that creates opportunity, doesn't it? You know, are we getting below market value deals? You know, have we got some cash to do deals quickly? You know, where are we linked up to property portals like Rightmove? You know, when it comes to referencing and when Section 21 and periodic tenancies go, what's going to happen? It means landlords are going to be much more stringent on referencing. Is that fair enough to say? Yes or no? I didn't hear you. Yes or no? Yes. You're protecting your asset. So you might have to get rent guarantee insurance. I think that's going to be most probably a bit of a given. Or you need to get a guarantor in place. Yeah? Insist on a guarantor. Really good company called Rent Guarantor that we've been starting to work with. Tenants pay for a policy, and the policy covers as like a guarantor was. Because obviously you get a guarantor, you want them to be a homeowner or have some assets. Is that correct? My sister, she's been a single mother. I've been her guarantor for the best part of 13 years. You know, as part of the policy. That might be part of your new terms of business, you know, depending on where that property is. Because, of course, if you're lying on grounds to get the tenant out, you know, having rent guarantee insurance will cover me every week, every month for my rent and pay for my legal fees until vacant possession. Knowing that we're trying to get the courts up to speed. I'm going to talk about the courts shortly. Yeah? You know, the compliance, licensing, understanding what's going on, being informed by GB landlords, being informed by Landlord Zone and other websites and other landlord associations. Understanding, because landlording can be quite a lonely business. Is that fair enough to say? You know? So it's important to understand, it's important to educate yourself. You know, I'm getting asked to do one-to-one Zooms with landlords now about strategy, about what they're doing. You know, understanding, planning. What's your business plan look like for the next 3 to 5 years? Think like business people. You are. You're entrepreneurs. You've actually set up a property business, you know. And if you are looking at staying in this business, how do I adapt? How do I look? How do I make myself more efficient? How do I make myself more compliant without taking too much time in the day? How can I be clever? How can I offer a better offering to my tenant? How can I make sure my relationship with the tenant is sound and they're transparent with me? Yeah? Because I want to get to the point where I can sleep easy at night, not be in a WhatsApp group with a million tenants and it going off a million times, and be able to sleep easy. Is that fair enough to say? Put a price on your time. Your time is valuable, you know, and that's where landlords go wrong. They try and do everything. Embracing property technology. A must. There's so many great property portals out there. You know, using spreadsheets. You should be moving on from that. When did your gas safety run out on one of your properties? I can't remember. You know, having a diarisation. Because that covers you. Because landlords are easy targets when it comes to pitching up fines. Is that fair enough to say? Yeah? So we need to make sure we're covered. We've got a paper trail of everything that we have. Really important. Invest in property education. There's lots of stuff. And how do we thrive? We have a power team round us. Yeah? We have a power team. You take a couple of pictures, Victoria, as well. Well done. I'll give you my best side. Right? Have a power team. So have you got maintenance guys that are really solid? You know? That's really hard. I mean, look, we've got to build Labour want to build 1.5 million properties, which is fantastic. But how many times have we heard the housing minister say we're going to build 300,000 properties a year? Bruce? You're a little bit older than me. Many, correct? Right? Right, but it's true. It's true. It never happens. Not enough brickies, not enough sparkies, not enough anyone. Not enough materials. That's the practicality of what's happening. It does not solve the homelessness problem. We've got a temporary accommodation crisis. We've got 1.3 million people on council waiting lists. I haven't checked the Newcastle waiting list, but the one in London, if you want a council property, it's going to take you 24 years. Right? It's not fit for purpose anymore. You know, hotels are packed out with people, homeless people, you know, migration and whatever. It's the infrastructure. We want there to be massive changes in planning laws. 100%. They said they need another 300 planning officers. Times that by 3, times that by 4. Yeah? You know, I spoke to a developer yesterday in Bristol. He's had a property and he's been waiting for planning for 3.5 years to build some flats. Ridiculous. You know, so we need reform, definitely. So making sure that you've got mentors, you have other landlords, you've got education providers, you've got the best letting agents out there, the best mortgage broker, yeah, the best tax advisor. That is your power team. It's important, really important. You know, making sure you've got alerts when it comes to property alerts and looking for new deals. You know, look at your mortgage rates. You should be doing that automatically. And obviously, Paul would have explained that to you. You know, understand your strengths and weaknesses. That's so important. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses, believe you me. I'm lucky I'm part of a big organisation with 220 staff. You know, I hate doing reports. I have to do them. I get someone to help me with them. You know, I mentor and I help people doing other stuff. Yeah? Making sure that you've got people around you that can help you do stuff. You know? Because everything is time consuming. And look at your good stock and your bad stock. What stock's working for me? And what stock is not working for me? Review it. That's business reviewing. I might have 8 properties. I keep on getting a property at 1 Charles Street. It's just not working for me. Whether it's the licensing, the tenants, the neighbours, my mortgage rates. I've got a problem with EPCs. We know, obviously, with regard to what's happening in 2030. You know, what adjustments can I do with the property? There's not a lot of expensive adjustments. You know, making my property better makes sense. It adds value. Yeah? You know, thinking about tenants' cost of utilities and affordability and sustainability. You know? Or is it a bad property where it's not performing? You know, is it a good property and it's doing really well? How can I compare? There's a really good website, actually, called if you write this down, Landlord. Called Landlord. It reviews your portfolio. It's really good bit of data. Understand, and I'm a dinosaur when it comes to tech as well. but try and train yourself up to embrace property technology and stats and algorithms. It really will help with your property experience. This is it. I forgot that we did this slide. So yeah, everyone wants to know about nightmare tenants, don't they? Right. So telling you about some horror cases we've had at Landlord Action. We had a landlord that cost 6 landlords £148,000. He was called Anthony Alexander. I exposed him on a programme called Inside Out on BBC One. And we evicted him twice, and then I exposed him. We had the rogue subletting gang called the Edgware Road Gang that were basically take rentals, have concierge, have letting agents on backhanders, take the property, stick them on Airbnb. They were going into the Arabic market where they were getting people coming over for medical treatments, renting out for big money, not passing monies on, being in massive breaches, multi-million pound. And I had about 15 to 18 cases with them. We were talking about scamming. And then we had the jigsaw murderer. I'm going a bit grim here. Don't mean to put you off renting, by the way. All right. But if you Google this guy called the jigsaw murderer, he was a tenant that we evicted. And what happened was the landlord came to my office with a black eye. Pardon me, with a black eye. I said, what's wrong? He goes, my tenant's just beating me up. I need you to evict him. So anyway, we evicted him. Thankfully, I never met him because I wouldn't be here now. But anyway, so, and then I did a talk at a council about 2 years later. He goes, Paul, do you remember me? And I said, sorry, I don't remember you. He goes, this guy, Stephen Marshall, you evicted 2-3 years ago. I said, okay. He goes, I've been contacted by the Sun newspaper crime correspondent. He's murdered his landlord. Now I'm getting your attention, aren't I? Right? Took me long enough. A living landlord with his girlfriend gets a bit grim. Shall I carry on? Yeah? Yes or no? You're getting a bit squeamish in the front there, right? He ended up chopping the body parts up and putting them in different counties. That's why he's called the jigsaw murderer. Google it. If you Google it now, you'll see this evil-looking face. But anyway, so that's the jigsaw murderer. So you don't want him as a tenant. But he's actually otherwise engaged somewhere else at the moment, not paying any rent. I can tell you that now. And then we get Vietnamese cannabis gangs, really common, you know. Dare I say it? Since I started Landlord Action, when I started Landlord 2000, I've been to loads of brothels. Purely professionally. You North and East landlords, you've got a one-track mind. But yeah, we have loads of brothels, subletting gangs, cannabis factories, you name it, we've dealt with it at Landlord Action. We have done the best part. And Victoria, put your hand up the back. Victoria works with me at Landlord Action, helping on the advice line as well. She's a landlord, used to be a letting agent. But yeah, we are literally like the Samaritans for landlords, basically. But it is all about the referencing. Just quickly, I've got about 5 minutes left. Section 8. Section 8s are going to be the way forward in the new world. Yeah? With 35 grounds. You're going to see toing and throwing and amendments and whatever. I said to the government, I sat down with, we need a ground for access. Big problem. At the moment, you have to go under ground 12. You need more mandatory grounds. You need to make sure the grounds work. We need to make sure the courts work. But we do have a shortage of judges, which is a worry for me. You've got to make sure that if you have to go to court, use a regulated firm of solicitors. Don't use a non-regulated eviction company, a regulated firm of solicitors. You know, I haven't got a clue about doing anything when it comes to my car. I use a mechanic. Some of you will never have to go to court. But if you do, it can be stressful, right? And it can be time-consuming. DIY, you could, trying to do the eviction yourself? You tried that. Sometimes it works for landlords. Sometimes it does not work for landlords. I'll do questions at the end if you don't mind, madam. Okay? So Section 8 is breach of tenancy, you know, and you'll have all these new grounds, like I said to you, all right? You've also, you know, you're going to have close members selling the property, severe antisocial behaviour, 3 months rent arrears. You know, I'm not convinced that the antisocial behaviour ground is strong enough, if I ask you. That's why people use Section 21. So I really worry about that, you know. So we need more detail. I am trying, there's a meeting in 2 weeks' time with a Master of the Rolls. I'm trying to gate crash that meeting. I don't know if I can or not, but I'm trying to get involved because I've got loads of case studies at Landlord Action. We've got to make sure these grounds work. You know, accelerated possession proceedings. They call it accelerated possession. It's not accelerated, right? On average now, it takes a judge 20 minutes to look at the paperwork. But now you've got a whole lot of stuff. It used to be the deposit scheme. Now you've got licensing, you've got gas safety, you've got EPCs. There's a whole load of stuff. Oh, I don't know what's going on there. Okay. So, you know, Section 21 is going. People will use it more while they can use it. Yeah. And again, you know, it's a last resort when it comes to evicting a tenant. You know, when you put a tenant in there, it's all good intentions. But you also get something as well, which is important, called gut feeling. Is that fair enough? You know, you experienced landlords. You get a tenant. If they're a genuine tenant, thank you. If they're a genuine tenant, they'll be transparent with you. But if you've got a tenant that buries their head in the sand, what can you do? What you should also think about doing is, I need to avoid court at all costs. I need to mediate with my tenant. We started a mediation business with the property redress scheme when obviously you couldn't evict a tenant for 6 months during COVID. If you've got a tenant own you rent and there's a problem with your property, you might think, I'll write the rent off just to get vacant possession and get them to sign a deed of surrender. That's good business sense. Avoid you going to court and waiting 6 to 12 months and not getting your rent and paying legal fees. I'm talking to you as a landlord, not someone that's a solicitor, you know, that runs a solicitor's. This is about common sense. It's about practicality. This is also to try and help you save a bit of mental health as well and not get a disease called landlord rage. It's true. Yeah, really, really true. So, you know, and we know why landlords use Section 21. There was, you know, historically for rent arrears, selling a property, moving back in the property, refurbishing, raising rents, which has been common, antisocial behaviour, and tenants obviously wanting to be evicted. And the unintended consequences, okay, is that, you know, you will be more stringent referencing. You'll get guarantors. Rents will rise. Mediation is needed. Grounds of Section 8 must work. Landlords need confidence in the court system. This is what I've been shouting and screaming. We need to get that. The housing minister turned around and said, 2 weeks ago, we are going to invest in the court system. Well, so did the other 2 housing ministers beforehand. And we were going to do housing courts. You know, we do need that confidence. It's really important. Landlords need confidence. Court update, the here and now. You know, the waiting times are 23 weeks. Getting a hearing date is not such a problem. It's getting the bailiffs. You know, last year we had the highest accelerated possession claims for Section 21 since 2016. You know, 29,000 Section 8 cases. My prediction is you're going to have 2025. You'll have the best part of maybe, if you're going to have hearing dates, maybe going 2026, you'll have 60 to 70 to 80,000 hearings. So there's going to be the judges are going to be busy. Bearing in mind, mortgage repossession hearings are going to go up, aren't they, as well? So I worry about that resource and how they're going to get resource, because trying to employ people in this working life, you know, talk about planning officers and bailiffs and builders, and you can't employ any. It's really, really difficult. So I worry about how we're going to do that and what's going to happen. You know, there should be a need of being able to transfer up to the High Court. So landlords, you've got a duty of being professional, being educated, showing care with regard to your tenants and your properties, having sympathy, having empathy, understanding what's out there and how we change to become more professional in our industry. Paul's predictions. Okay, so this is what I think. Could be right, could be wrong, who knows. I think interest rates will come down. Okay, I think there's going to be greater opportunities in social housing with regard to leasing. If you think what's going to happen, we see about guaranteed rent or rent to rent. We've all heard of it. That market's going to collapse because you can't underpin it with an AST and a short-hold tenancy. What I would look at would be 3 and 5 year leases with regard to maybe counselling, housing providers, where they do everything and you have a working lease. I mean, I work with one of the biggest operators in London called Elliott Lee. They manage 1,800 properties and work for 20 councils. You know, I think that will be a way forward because it makes the landlord compliant. They don't have to fully manage. They don't get any voids. The rent's paid. I think that will be an opportunity for landlords to look at to take some of the stress away. Be more developments taking place. You know, I think also we're definitely seeing, and I work with a few, we're seeing loads of corporate funds coming in, pension funds coming. I'm working one at the moment. They've got 3,500 units. We're seeing them ramp up. There's a lot more funds coming in to the PRS. Looking at a serviced and shared accommodation space, I think that will increase, without a doubt. There will be an increase in Section 21s, increase in rent arrears. I think that's inevitable because of rents shooting up and the cost of living. But it will create opportunities for landlords, without a doubt. Yeah? Okay, there's my details, okay? I also have a website at the bottom there called Paul Shamplina. Oh, I've just, see, I always have to do something, don't I? Just drop water. I don't break the chandelier, I've got to flood the place out. There you go. Right, health and safety, we need a mop, please. Thank you. So I'm so clumsy, aren't I? And I haven't even given my free balls out yet. But what I'm gonna do, if I don't mind, I'm gonna ask questions, but I'm gonna walk. Can I walk and talk, please? Thank you. While you clear the mess up. Look at that. Oh my God. I always do something. Am I coming back next year or not, Bruce? Okay. Who's got a question for me? Well, there we go. You can have a ball. What's your question?
I think it's a huge elephant in the room of the PRS, and it's the age of landlords. A lot of silver-haired landlords are in the sector now. What happens when they start retiring or dying?
You're talking about death now. Jesus Christ. But it's true. There's a lot of older landlords, in there. There are younger landlords coming into the marketplace, without a doubt. There is institutional investment coming in, first-time buyers, you know. I think that is a worry. I think it's a really good question. What's going to happen? Landlords are replacing other landlords. It is happening, without a doubt. I mean, I saw a recent market, 20% of properties on the housing market at the moment in the last 3 years have been up for rentals. So I think landlords will replace other landlords, but I think that's an issue. I think when there is older landlords, I think obviously you are pushing those portfolios down to your families as well, so they can be carried on. But yeah, I think that might be an issue. But there are landlords are taking other landlords' place. Who else got a question? Can I give you a ball? So I'm passing the balls. You notice that? If you've got that on camera, I'm passing the balls. Right, okay. Yes. All right, go on.
Why do you have such a deficit in bailiffs?
Right, so good question. Why is there a shortage of bailiffs? So I'll ask you a question. Who wants to be a bailiff? Put your hand up. Right, you want to be a bailiff? Right, I'm going to pay you £22,000 a year. You'll be spat at and abused on the doorstep. Or you can just stay at home for that. It doesn't really matter. But what I'm saying is, it's not a great job. You have to go in twos. There's health and safety issues. We've got a massive shortage of bailiffs. What we should be doing is we should be having the right to be able to transfer the case to the High Court and use High Court enforcement officers. I've been using them for years. But you've got to get the leave from the court. The judges aren't giving the leave. They're slowing the process up. If you look at a report, what I might be able to do, Bruce, I'll send you the report. I was involved in this report, and I've just put it in the blog. In 2019, I put a report out with other people called Beyond Section 21. We said you have to use High Court enforcement officers to deal with the shortage of bailiffs and the increased evictions. It's a big worry. Yeah, trying to employ more bailiffs is a real issue. Last question, and you get my last ball.
Yeah. What percentage of tenants do you think are rogue tenants?
Right, so very good question, actually. What percentage of tenants are rogue tenants? How do you define a rogue tenant? Is a rogue tenant someone that doesn't look after your garden or won't give you an inspection? Is a rogue tenant who's lost her job 3 months into an AST? Is that a rogue tenant? It could be a bad tenant. But you understand there's different definitions of rogue, and it's classified. So what I'm saying to you is, when it comes to bad tenants, and I've told you some shocking stories there, bad tenants are someone that doesn't look after the property, someone that disrespects you, someone that doesn't pay the rent or won't make any effort to pay the rent or try and pay off the rent arrears, or someone that will go from one property to another, you know, with a serial bad tenant. They're still small minorities. The whole point of all of you guys, whether you're doing lettings yourself, whatever, and what I talk about and what I've been doing for years, is to make you streetwise. You've all come across a bad tenant in your years. Is that fair enough to say? It's what have you learned from it? Well, I'm going to trust that. I'm not going to do that. Or I'm going to take this out. Or I'm going to do that. Or these are my terms of business. You know, You've got to get that gut feeling stronger and keep on learning. That's why you've got to keep educating yourself and going portfolios. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.